Acts verses 27, verses 13 to 38, a continuation of Paul's nautical adventure in the Mediterranean. Euroclydon. In verse 13 it begins, Hyponev Santos they notu, and having blown gently south, Doxantes tis prothesios kekratikene, having thought the purpose to have reached of a good sail to Rome, Arantes, having lifted off, Ason paralagonto tin Cretin, they sail close by Crete. Now here's our map. Crete, you can see where this wind is going to come down, and it's going to blow where they're going to be shoved along by this hurricane-powered wind, the force of a storm from the northeast. In verse 14, met u poli they evale kat aftis animos tiphonikos, but not long after, a stormy wind shot by it. O kalumenos Euroclydon, being called Euroclydon in the Greek pronunciation. This is a famous wind in the eastern Mediterranean. Like I mentioned, it's almost a hurricane force type of a wind. Verse 15, Sinar pasthentos they to plio, and having been seized with force, the boat, kemi dinamenu, antophthalmein to animo, and not able to tack into the wind, epidontes epherometha, having given up, we bore off. So they're trying to probably go back into safety of Crete when they say tack. Now, I mentioned in the last section I did sailing for many years, so I know a lot of these nautical terms, to tack. So the wind is blowing down, this whatever way it's blowing, it's blowing, and now a boat to go into it can't go straight into it without a motor. So in those days, of course, they didn't have a motor. So as I mentioned, they go in a 45 degrees. That's called tacking. So you tack into the wind. So that means they were turned around, trying to head back to safety to Crete. But they weren't able to. It was just too strong. Trying to tack in the hurricane wind, forget it. And so having given up, we bore off. So they pulled the tiller, and the boat turned around where the now, instead of trying to go into the wind, it turns around, and now the wind is behind it. They stick these sails out, and that's called running, and that wind just pushes the boat wherever it wants to go. You have a tiller, you can steer it if it's not too strong, but if the wind is too strong, then it can take over, and basically you're out of control, which is pretty much what's happening to these people. In verse 16, Nision they ti hypodramontes kalumenon klavdin molis escisamen periskratis geneste tis scaphis, and having run under some small island, being called Clauda. Today it's called Gavdos. It's 30 miles off the southwest of Crete. You can go into Wikipedia and find out about this small island. Basically, it's almost uninhabited. And they have a skiff, which is a small boat that they can send out for different reasons, to bring goods to shore, back and forth, take people back to shore or forth, or to do work around the side of the boat while inside of the little skiff. So it has all kinds of purposes for this scaphis, a skiff. So they weren't able to put the skiff out because the weather was just too strong. It would have blown this little skiff all over, which pretty much is happening here, which it says in 17, in arantes, which having taken up, voitheos, akronto, they employed helps. That is line, they call it line, it's ropes. If you're not into nautical terminology, they put ropes, line, undergirding the boat. Epozone nuntes to pleon. So they're taking these ropes and they're wrapping around the boat, hoping that it can tie it together so it won't come apart. And continues, Fovumeni the meis tin sirtin ek pesosi, and fearing they should fall off into the Syrtis Gulf. Now here's a map of the area that they were in. We see down here Cyrene, and the Syrtis Gulf is here, and they were afraid they were going to get pushed into what's called the Syrtis Gulf. Here's that little island of Clauda off of Crete, so they went underneath it this way, and they're now being pushed down into the land, and they could hit anywhere in here. It could have been just right here. They would have been in the Syrtis Gulf. It has two notorious sandbars, which many ships ran aground on, which this was a big ship, and shallow water, and it's off the coast of Libya. You can look up that Syrtis, Syrtis, in Wikipedia and find out more about that area. And continuing, halasantes to, having let down the skevos, rigging. Rigging is another nautical term. Rigging is what holds a mast up, and lines that hold it's called the rigging. And without the rigging, nothing would hold it up. And the rigging also pulled the booms of there were arms that held the sail here, and you let it out, or you could pull it in by pulleys. And this rigging was all the ropes that were used to do all these things. And so they were borne along. In verse 18, Svodros they hemazomenon imon, and vehemently, with our being tossed by the storm, little boats up and down, going down these waves, te ekthis ekvolin epeunto. On the next day, an expulsion of cargo was made. In verse 19, ke te triti avtochiras tin skevin to pliu eripsamen. And the third day, with our own hands, we tossed out the rigging of the boat. So now they're taking out all the ropes that they don't need to lighten the boat and throwing it overboard. Verse 20, mite the iliu, mite astron, epiphenonton, epi pleontas, imeras, and neither sun nor stars were appearing for many more days. So it's kind of scary being in a storm that's long. Hemonaus te uk oligo epikimenu, and not a small distress was pressed upon us. And we find out there's over 200 people on this boat, so I'm sure there was a lot of commotion, crying and screaming going on. So the distress. Lipon perier ito asa elpis to sozisthe imas, and all hope remaining was preserved for us to be delivered. It should be delivered instead of preserved here. I have to change it for the 5th edition, which I'm working on right now. Won't be out probably for a year. Preserved. Sozo 4982. I'll go over this word here a little bit later. In verse 21, polis the asetias eparchusis, but a long lack of food existing, which I don't understand stand because it said it had a grain on board that they threw over later here, but lack of food existing. Tote stathiso Pavlos in meso afton epen, and Paul, then Paul standing in their midst said, Ethi men, indeed it behooved you, O Andres, O men, with tharhi santos me, to have yielded obedience to me, to not have left. Me anagesthe apo tis Kritis, to not have been barked from Crete. Kerdise te tin ivrin tavtin ketin zimian, so as to gain this damage and the loss. Scolding them. I don't know how much that went over. In verse 22, Ke tanin pareno imas ev thimin, and at present I earnestly advise you to be cheerful. Well, being in the storm, be cheerful. Okay, well, good luck on that. Apovoli gar psikis udamia este ex imon, for not one life will be cast off from you, plane to pliu, except the boat. So nobody's going to die, but the boat will be destroyed. Verse 23, Paresti gar mi ti nikti tavti angelos tu theou, for there stood beside me in this night an angel of God. U imi u, of which I am, oke la trevo, and in whom I serve, that is the God, not the angel. Legon, the angel, saying, Mi fovu, Pavle, fear not, Paul. Caesare se thee parastine, Caesar you must stand before. So he knows he's going to be in Rome. Ke idhu, and behold, Kekaris de si otheos patus tus pliontas matasu, God has granted to you all the ones sailing with you. They're all going to be delivered. Verse 25, Theo ev themite, therefore be cheerful, Andres men, pestevogar to Theo, for I believe in God, oti utos este kath ontropon lalalite me, that so it will be in which manner it was been spoken to me. It's going to happen. Verse 26, Is nison they tina the imas ekpasin, but we must fall onto a certain island. Now, the God, the angel, told them that was going to happen, which we'll find out in the next section does happen. In verse 27, Oste tesarakai thekati nix ageneto, but when the 14th night came to pass, that's 2 weeks, the apheromenon imon in to Adria, we were being carried about in the Adriatic, and the Adriatic will go to a map. So the Adriatic lies between Greece and Italy, which is over in this area right here. Kata meson tis niktos epanon in navte prosagin tina avtis horon. And towards the middle of the night, the seamen suspected, some of them suspected, some region nearing. Should read that out here. In the middle of the night, 1, the 2 seamen, 3 suspected some region neared them. Have to follow all these numbers. This one's not too easy, but it's what it is. So they suspected they were for some reason because they had been sounding. Sounding is throwing a line overboard, a rope, which you have some type of a rock or some type of a marker every, let's say, 6, 7 feet. 6 feet would be a fathom. So every 6 feet, you have and so you can tell, how many of these knobs are on the rope. So if there's 5 of them, so then they're each 6 feet, you got 30 feet. So they drop this down, and then when they finally all the way down, they hit ground, because they would know that, because the rope on top then would collapse because it wasn't being pulled with force by the water. So this is what they were doing, apparently, and knowing that they're getting close to some ground, because if you go down, it's not hitting anything, and all of a sudden you hit some ground. Well, it could be a high spot in the ocean, but it also could be a place where it's going shallower. In verse 28, ke volisantes, voli is a casting out, they sounded. Evron orgies ikosi, they found it 20 fathoms. Now, 20 fathoms is 120 feet, with a fathom being 6 feet. And then vrakide via stesantes, K, then a short time having elapsed, and again volisantes having sounded, Evron orgias decapente. They found it 15 fathoms, so now it's 90 feet deep. So they know they're getting close to land. 29. Fovumenite mitpos is trakis topus ek somen, and fearing perhaps they should fall into rough places and break up the boat and everybody could get killed. Ek trimnes ripsantes ankyros tesares, and they having tossed out 4 anchors from out of the stern. So with these anchors, these heavy weights, will keep the boat from going any further, because it's now within depth for throwing out an anchor and holding the boat instead of crashing in the middle of the night not knowing what's going on. It says here, if xonto imaran geneste, vowing day to come to pass, or hoping day will come when they can figure out what's going on better. And then verse 30, ton de navton zitun ton, fegin ek tu plio, and the seamen seeking to flee from out of the boat, instead of having it crashing and breaking up and getting killed, so they wanted to get away from it somehow. Ke halasanton tin scaffing istin thalasan, and having let down the skiff into the sea, so they had that small boat, maybe it held 10 people or so. They let it down into this ocean. I don't know how rough it was then. It might have been starting to calm down, but they were going to get into the boat and then go to the shore and save themselves, and the heck with the boat, the people. But it says, profasi os ek proras melonton ankyros ek tenin, with an excuse as to be about to stretch out the anchors from the prow. Then the prow would be the front. So to take the anchors and keep it away from the island. And this is what this is what they said they're going to do. Go out there and throw the anchor so the boat would stay into the waves and the rear wouldn't go pushed onto the island. Epen o Pavlos to ekaton tarki, ketis stratiotas, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, ones guarding, ean me uti minosin entoplio, if these should not stay in the boat, these men trying to do that, imi sothine u vinaste, you will not be able to be delivered. Now I got to change that one. It's 2 of them in this chapter to be changed, to be preserved, delivered. You will not be able to be delivered. I'm going to go here in a little bit and explain more about that. It's interesting. But then in 32, tote e stratiote apekopsanta skenia tis scaphis, ke iason aftin ek pasin. Then the soldiers cut off the lines, the ropes of the skiff, and allowed it to fall off. So basically, before these men got into the boat, they cut the lines, and off went that little skiff, so they could no longer get on to it. In verse 33, Akri deu emelan imera genese, and until day was about to come to pass, parakali o Pavlo apantas metalavin trophies. Paul appealed for all to share in nourishment. Legon, saying, Tesseros kai dekatin simeron imiron pros thokuntas asiti diatalite. Today is the 14th day. You continue expecting food without eating, expecting for hope. Me then, proslavomeni, having taken nothing to yourselves, Dio parakalo imas proslavin trophies. Therefore I appeal to you to take nourishment. Tutogor prostis imeteras soterias. For this is for your deliverance. I got it right here, the deliverance. Now, the deliverance exists. 4991 deliverance. Now, I like to write a book almost on the word 4991, 4992, 4990 and 91, I think it is, on the mistranslation of this Greek word, like I did when calling it preserve, should be to be delivered at all places. This word appears in the King James 6 different forms of English for the one word. The Apostolic Bible, which has a Greek Old Testament, it couldn't be because it doesn't have all these meanings. It just used one word to deliver, which I didn't follow my own instructions, which I'm mentioning right now, which I'm going to hopefully go through and change. But the King James, what words did it use? Well, it did use deliver one place, Acts 7:25. Now you can look up in your King James and check me out, see if I got it right. Then here in the King James, for your health, it's called soterias, health, exists for your health. Well, that's not even close to a good translation. That would be the worst one. Or healed in Mark 5:23, Luke 8:36, and Acts 14:9. For that word is, they use the word healed. It has nothing to do with being healed. And then it's made whole. There's another usage in the King James in Matthew 9:21 and 22, Mark 5:28-34, 6:56, 10:52, and Luke 8:48, 50, and 17 verse 1, and Acts 4:9. All those places made whole. They're delivered, not whole. And next one is shall do well. King James uses that. They shall do well. John 11:12. And then preserve, 2 Timothy 4:18, which I used earlier. So this word, but in the Greek Old Testament, they didn't use. King James translators went to the Hebrew Old Testament, where the writers of the New Testament never went to the Hebrew. They always went to the Greek. So going to the Greek, which I have done with the Apostolic Bible, and you can do by going back there, looking up 4991 or 90, you'll find deliver, and to deliver, and delivering, or delivered, and or deliverance. If I did it hopefully the right way. Now, this type of usage of using these different English words for one Greek word happens quite a bit. Another one is with test and tempt. We have the same Greek word, but the King James used when test in certain places and tempt if it was from the devil. But it's always test in the King James. In the Apostolic Bible, I've always used test. And then the word for name of, we call Jesus, it's called Joshua in the book of Joshua. And then the priest was Zerubbabel, was also called Joshua, but all of these was in Greek Isus. You can see it, Isus. So they're all Isus. We call it Jesus, and King James made it Jesus and Joshua. Then another word that the King James used, which I don't, is faith. You'll say, well, what's wrong with faith? Well, there's nothing wrong with faith except this, the word that it's used for in the Greek is a verb. That is, the Greek word is a verb. So you can't faith, or you can add other words to it, but it's basically to believe or to trust, and depends on the context of which one I use. A child doesn't believe when his father tells him, he trusts him. Another person may not have complete trust there, but he does believe in something that doesn't need trust. You can believe in that the sun is behind the clouds, but doesn't mean you trust it. So all these different words in English for these Greek words are very interesting. Now we'll go back to our text. Tutokar prostis imetera soterias, and for this exists for your deliverance, for the food. Uthenos gar imon trix ek tis kephalis pesite. For not one hair of yours will fall from out of your head. 35. Epon they tavta, having said these things, kelavon arton, and having taken bread, ev haristisi, to theo, enopion panton, he gave thanks to God before all. Now, interestingly, we talk about praying. Jesus tells you when you pray to go into side of a room and close the door and lock it and pray in secret. Well, praying and giving thanks are two different things, because some people will say, well, we pray. Well, we give thanks when we're eating, and then the Lord's Prayer, in no place in the Lord's Prayer does it have giving thanks that I see. Our Father who art in heaven, acknowledgement, so forth. So here we have giving thanks before they eat. Ke klassus erxato esthin, and having broken the bread, he began to eat. Evthemi they genomeni pantus, and all, having become cheerful, ke afti prosalavonto trophies, also they took nourishment. In verse 37, Amen de ento plio e passe psyche diacosie ebdomi conta ex. And we in the boat were all 276 souls. This is a big boat. Verse 38, Corasthentus they trophies, then having been satisfied with nourishment, ek kuphizon to plion, ek valomeni ton ceton is 10,000. They lightened the boat, casting out the grain into the sea. So I suppose this throwing out all these things keeps the boat from filling up, because water was probably coming in from the waves. That's what I'm imagining. It doesn't say that. But if it was coming in and they're trying to bail out, you want to make the boat higher. And to do that, you have to take out the weight from inside the boat, and they'll raise up, and you'll have more leeboard on the side. Instead of, if it was real far down, you only have a couple of feet before the water to the top of the rail, and then if you go up, you could double it. So throwing out these things and getting rid of the weight. Our next section, the shipwreck on Malta.